Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you again for tuning in. We are in our fourth installment of our podcast series, talking to our grant recipients for our empowerment grants. Um, we want to thank you for joining us today. We'll be talking about some of the tips and tricks, their experiences, and also to learn more about the 2023-2024 cycle grant recipients. If you're new here, my name is Eddie Davis II, and I'm the Midwest BDC's Director of Grants and Development. Our mission at Midwest BDC is to decarbonize the Midwestern building sector by 2050. Our states are Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Ohio. Let me tell you a little bit about our granting program. To align the coalition's work with the Justice 40 and Climate Funded Justice Pledge, Midwest BDC has committed 40% of its annual budget to re-granting work, either through participation stipends for our coalition members or through our empowerment grants. We know that the environment and justice have not impacted all the communities the same. Black, brown, indigenous, and people of color, members of frontline communities, and historically marginalized groups and environmental justice communities are strongly encouraged to apply. Um, Real quickly, guys, so today is August 20th, Tuesday, August 20th. Our grant opened August 1, our empowerment grant cycle and participation stipend for this year opened on August 1st. It does close on August 30th, though, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And how you can apply to that fund, you can go to our MidwestDecarb.org webpage, look under the tab for funding programs, and then you can pull down the information from there. But enough about the regranting program. We're going to talk about this gentleman, Mr. James Trice, on the screen here. James Trice is the founder and CEO of the Public Policy Project. In 2001, James created Public Policy Project, an independent provider of public policy consulting, leadership training, civic engagement training, lobbying, environmental and social justice, strategic planning, and advocacy services addressing policy issues affecting Black and Brown people, other communities of color, and low-income communities. PPP provides a vehicle for these communities to understand both their role of public policy in shaping their experience of oppression and marginalization, and the opportunity to generate improved policy platforms and better promote their well-being. PPP believes that people have far more power than they realize, and too often allow problems to fester, poses serious risk to our future, and that to bring our truly egalitarian democracy. Individuals must develop the capacity to organize consciousness and living infrastructures of a participatory democracy to actively transform public policy in their interest. Yeesh, James, that's a lot, man.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
But anyway, thank you so much, sir, and we are glad to have you here. Can you welcome? We want to welcome you. Tell the listening audience, the viewer audience, a little bit about yourself and PPP.
Well, yeah, you said it all. Like you said, it's a mouthful. And reason why is because we've done a lot of things over the years since we started the Public Policy Project. Again, I'm James Trice, and grew up in Illinois, and then moved to Minneapolis from Chicago in 1990, and worked to really organize communities here in the South Side, or here in Minneapolis, or in the state of Minnesota, all over actually. Really to really focus on Black folk, to focus on helping Black folks really understand their power and how to use their power to really change our present circumstances and the world in which we live in. So
Okay.
thank you. I'm glad to be a part. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. We appreciate it. And so, yeah, this is the fourth installment of our Empowerment Grant podcast, talking to former recipients of the grant, and we want to kind of dive right in, and talk more about what the PPP Environmental Justice Coordinating Council is. How does one get involved in it? What does it do within the community? What's the impact it does?
Well, first, the Public Policy Project I started in 2021. And really, the mission of the Public Policy Project really is to help build the power of the Black and Brown communities, and collaborative power within and across communities of color, to guide all marginalized communities and oppressed people towards an equitable, inclusive, and healthy future. We started off as a leadership training, civic engagement company, and we trained thousands of people all in the state of Minnesota, but all over the country, in how to understand how policy works, how public policy works, how civic engagement works, and how to make your voice heard. Knowing that electoral politics, civic engagement is just one tool Black people can use to really address the issues and the ills that we face in this country. And did that for several years until 2017. I was approached by a major foundation here who wanted to do some investment in an area of Minneapolis with the largest concentration of African Americans in the state, and that's in North Minneapolis. Because North Minneapolis was considered and is considered by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has the worst air quality out of any community in the state of Minnesota. The worst air quality. Now think about this for a second. You have the largest concentration of African Americans in the state of Minnesota located in North Minneapolis. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only place we're at. We're all over the state, but the largest concentration of us is in North Minneapolis, and it has the worst air quality. Now, you think that's by accident. No, that's not by accident. We have 13 manufacturing companies that's spewing toxins into the air in North Minneapolis. None of them, by EPA standards, quote unquote, is violating air quality standards per se. But collectively they are. And this major foundation approached me and said, James, we want to begin to change this dynamic. And how do we do that? And we want to, what do you think? What are your ideas? What are your suggestions around how we can make major investments into North Minneapolis to really mitigate the harm caused by these pollutants, air, water, and soil pollutants? And so what I did was contacted a friend of mine, his name is Sam Grant, and we put our heads together and we presented to this foundation 5 ideas about what we think is best for them to invest in and how they're going to invest their resources. And out of that came the Public Policy Project. Environmental Justice Coordinating Council. It was a group of individuals brought together, about 25 individuals who started off, all African American, all Black folk, who we began to really help engage in the decision-making process around environmental justice, but also give them an understanding of the sources and the kinds of air pollutants that are in the air, in the water, in the soil that we live in. What we started off with, though, however, was before getting to that was when we sat down and started doing one-to-ones with people around what do they think about when they hear the word environment, or what do they think about when they hear the word environmental justice. And many of them came out with things like police brutality, drive-by shootings, gang violence, boarded vacant houses, substandard housing, unemployment, and all of the disparities that exist in education and employment and income and so forth. And they said, these are environmental issues to us. And I said, wow. And I thought about it for a second, because they are. All of those issues impact our environment, but as well as air, water, and soil. But these are the things that bubbled up for people, were those things I just mentioned. And they didn't think about necessarily the air that they're breathing, right? The water that they're drinking, the soil that they may be having. They have a farm, urban farm, or, their little farm that their little garden that they're growing their fruits and vegetables, and that they were growing that stuff in and polluted, mostly lead-filled dirt or soil. And I began to talk to them about this, and they said, wow, that does make sense. We need to begin to address this. The other thing was that we realized that mainstream environmental organizations, MEOs, what we call them, are really rife with white folk. Black folks are not in those spaces. Millions and millions of dollars are going to these environmental organizations that are trying to address issues impacting. But Black folks are not at the table. We're not there when those decisions are made. So so we're saying if the right people who are impacted by the issues are not at the table to decide what happens, then the right decision is not going to be made, because they don't know how the stuff is impacting us. So we created the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council as a fellowship. The 1-year fellowship, recruit individuals every year. They join, they get a stipend, but they go through a litany of environmental education trainings by professors and environmental justice advocates and organizers that have been working in this field for a long time. Engaging people like Howard Bullard, who's considered the father of environmental justice. Robert Bullard, shall I say? I apologize. Robert Bullard, who's considered There's a young lady, I mention her name in a second. You may know who she is, Dorothea Taylor, who is a professor at the University of Michigan on environmental science. So we brought people there to educate these folks. They get educated, and the purpose of it is to educate them so they can understand what's happening in their environment, and then for them to turn around and educate others, as well as be at the table when decisions are made around the environment. So the mission of EJCC was it visualizes, creates, and implements ecological, economic, and strategic investments to end environmental racism, right? In the African American community and beyond. But our first focus, since Public Policy Project was focused on our community, Black folk, African Americans. Also, the other term is ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, because we do not want to be, we do not want to mix up when you see, I don't talk about people of color. Many times, Black folks are not at the table when we talk about people of color, or we say BIPOC or whatever. We have to be specific around descendants of slavery, not necessarily descendants of slaves, but descendants of slavery. Those of us who are descendants of those folks who suffered, the billions of folks who suffered through slavery. So that's what EJCC does. They stay a year, they get stipends, they participate, and they go on to really do work and engage in other with other groups that are on the front lines of addressing environmental issues.
Great, great. Um, so, question now, we get into the empowerment grant. What, so you received the grant last year during our 23-24 regranting cycle. How did you utilize the funds that you received to continue the mission of and the work that you're doing with EJCC?
Right. Thank you. Great question. A few things we did. First, what happened was we what we call EJCC fellows, cohort fellows, is they facilitate a series of community meetings in the community around environmental health and environmental justice. Talking about things like what's in the air we breathe, what's in the water, what's in the land, right? Also, what are some trade-offs when it comes down to energy transition? Understanding there's going to be some trade-offs when it comes down to energy transition, but also just organizing it, managing it, facilitating these community meetings. And these are individuals, most of them have never done this before. This is new to them. And they did a series of community education series around environmental justice and environmental issues. It allowed these individuals to meet with people like the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and other government entities to really help address how to deal with the pollutants in their community. Individuals participated in field trips, like taking a trip to the One Water Summit in Tucson, Arizona, back in November, and got a chance to do that. We paid, the money from Midwest BDC helped pay for that, helped pay for those community meetings. They produced several public service announcements that they flooded the community in barbershops and nail care salons and grocery stores and places where people gather, just to give them an understanding of what's in the environment. And they put a QR code so people can just use their phone and pull up the information that's on those QR codes from like the EPA or MPCA, and information around how they contribute as human beings, how we contribute to the carbon, to the carbon that's in our environment. And I got to be honest, I contributed on a regular basis because I like bonfires. I have a fire pit in my backyard, right? But that contributes to the production of carbon emissions in the air, right? Burning of wet wood and things like that. But learning those things, right? Learning, and a lot of people don't know. You go to the grocery store now and you see these now, and I don't know when these began to sprout up, but these flushable wipes that they begin to use, and they're really not flushable, right? And people don't understand that you cannot put these in the toilet. But also really helping people understand what's in the environment and what are the sources of the carbon emissions, who's actually doing this, what are the companies that are doing this. They got this education. And then lastly, and not just and I say lastly because there's more to it, but lastly in this short time in our conversation, they were able to work with the city of Minneapolis to come up with this cost share program for companies that are polluting the air, that are producing carbon, right, that are emitting carbon emissions, right? Although uh, they may not be violating air quality standards, but yet they're emitting this carbon, right? And so what they've been doing is meeting with these businesses, with the city of Minneapolis, to say if you make some adjustments to how you produce and how you manufacture. One thing is for companies who use solvents or paints or whatever else for their auto body shops, right? To say, look, if you change to a water-based solvent, a water-based paint, then the city of Minneapolis will reimburse you up to 75% of the cost it takes you to stop doing that, right? To swap out, right? And so meeting with these companies. A more recent victory we just had was this ice cream place. It's run by Kemp's. People know who Kemp's. The company Kemp's has a plant or office located in North Minneapolis, and these trucks run all night, right? These trucks, these semi trucks, are sitting there running all night, and it's in a residential neighborhood, and these trucks run all night. We were able to really sit down and talk with Kemp's, get Kemp's to agree to reducing and make some changes to how they do business, right? Stop running the trucks or whatever else. And I forget the exact agreement that Kemp's came up to, but they agreed to participate in the cost share program from the city of Minneapolis in conjunction with us. And then lastly, I want to say, I don't know that was lastly, but the last I want to say that EJCC was also instrumental in helping to write the enabling resolution for the green zones. Green zones is a designated area identified the city of Minneapolis, the mayor of Minneapolis, these areas are high concentrations of pollutants and high concentrations of poverty and lead and boarded vacant houses and things like that, and they're called green zones. And the city of Minneapolis wants to do some serious investments into really changing that. The Environmental Justice Coordinating Council Fellows, EJCC, help write the enabling resolution, and we are now have seats and individuals who come through Environmental Justice Coordinating Council now are welcome to join the Green Zones board that meets every month, and it's open for. And when I say board, it's kind of, I think they changed the name to a board and commission, right, or something like that, right? And so what happens now? People can apply to be on this committee to advise the city of Minneapolis on how to address these issues in Minneapolis. So we have 6 seats reserved for us, actually. So when we get a new group of fellows in, sometime they leave the green zone and go start doing other things. Other times we've had EJC members who still remain on, even though their fellowship is done, they still remain on this advisory board, this Green Zone Advisory Council, to really advise the mayor and the city council on how to reduce carbon emissions in Minneapolis and address other pollutants.
Gotcha. Okay. So, real quick, give me one win and one challenge you have in this past year's work.
Okay, one win was that we were able to advise the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency on how this group that they formed called the EJAC, Environmental Justice Advisory Group, that they formed, how that group should operate, the power that group should have in helping to push the MPCA on addressing environmental concerns in the whole state of Minnesota, right? So we were able to sit down and meet with the commissioner, her staff, and other high-ranking officials of the of the MPCA, to really how that group should operate. And we were able to get a bill passed, working with other groups, not EJCC by itself, but work with other groups to get a bill passed called the Cumulative Impacts Bill. I talked to you earlier about how there's a proliferation of industry and manufacturing companies in North Minneapolis that contribute to the high levels of carbon emissions in North Minneapolis. That this group helps, or the bill that passed will limit that moving forward from the proliferation of these companies coming in. So it was a statewide bill that got passed that said you cannot do this anymore. You cannot continue if there's a high level of pollutants in the area. We cannot add to that, to those contributors of pollutants in the area. In other words, the manufacturing companies in North Minneapolis, no longer can another manufacturing company go in there. And then future, when they go for a permit to continue to operate, then there's going to be higher demands or higher restrictions on them and how they operate moving forward. So it was able to get that bill passed. Some of the challenges, one of the challenges is that it's slow. People are reluctant. People are resistant. And maybe that's the way it is because because this has been an issue that has been around for a long, long time. But getting individuals to understand that this work needs to be done, it just has to happen. So that's one of the challenges. One loss we had, but we're going to continue to do it, is we want the MPCA to institute this group that they had some years ago that really determined whether they should permit a company or not, should issue permits or not. And they had the power, and this was a community group some years ago, they had the power to direct MPCA to say, we don't want you to permit to this particular company because we know they have a history of polluting communities. We were not able to win that at the legislature with other groups, like I said, but we're going to continue to try. We're going to continue to push for that group to happen. So.
Good. Okay. Yeah. And advocacy work is never done, unfortunately. You might think you got to win here, but then something else pops up and there you go. You're right back on the grind with it. So, all hands on deck. Resources are always needed. And so we definitely can understand the work you're doing. Glad that you're actually utilizing the funds, for that sort of work. I have a conversation so far with about 7 different prospective applicants for the empowerment grant. And we talked a lot about, they asked me questions, what can I use the money for? Or, can I use it to do this and that? And I said 3 things. One, it needs to be something revolving around decarbonization and environmental justice, or anything related to environment, period. 2, you can use it for anything as long as it hits touching those points. And 3, you got to be a member of our coalition. So once you get all those things out of the way, you really get people, interested and excited. So that's kind of where we are. So real quick, while we got a few minutes left, what would you give? Just some, give me 2 to 3 tips that you would give prospective applicants for the empowerment grant funds.
Okay, let me say this before I answer that question. I want to be clear with people. EJCC did not do any lobbying or engage in any lobbying work with these dollars. We just engaged with communities to get them to talk with their decision makers and to work with other groups to help push things they were moving at the legislature. And this is one of them. And these are ideas that we supported. So I just want to clarify that. These dollars were not used for lobbying work at all, but to support issues that we hold true. So let me just say that. So tips for individuals coming through. One is be clear. Be clear about what it is you're trying to do, right? Know what it is that you want to work on with regard to carbon emissions. Be specific around the work that you're doing, that it does connect with how to reach our goal. I think it's 2050, 0 carbon emissions by 2050, and that is working toward that. Do not be nervous that if it's connected, if it doesn't directly say carbon emissions, but it your work leads to that, right? It supports the work of individuals working toward carbon emissions. Don't be afraid to apply still anyway, because your work, as long as you can make the connection that this work that we're doing is going to lead to a reduction in carbon emissions, right? So I think those are the three things. Don't be afraid. Be clear, be concise, be consistent, and then, try to make it compelling, a compelling argument for what you're trying to do. But don't be nervous. The people at Midwest BDC and us, we are, Marnice Jackson, our leader, is, she's willing to hear and listen to you, and she's long and patient and fair, but wants to see this work done. And all the staff there, Eddie, I'm talking to you now. So just don't be nervous. Don't be afraid. The worst thing they can say is no, come back, or they may say you may want to look at this, or you may want to change this or that. They may just give you some. So don't be afraid to apply. Is what I'm saying to people.
Appreciate it, James. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today, and we thank James Trice again for his organization's work and what they're doing in the community in Minnesota, and creating the next change agents in that, not only in that state, that can go across other areas of the Midwest and of the country and do their work in environmental justice, because it's definitely needed with the way things are going currently in today's society, and with the resources out there. Someone has to advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves. As a reminder, you can learn more about our regranting program, our past recipients, and apply for this year's funds on our website at www.midwestdecarb.org. Again, today, folks, is Tuesday, August 20th. We have exactly 10 days to get your applications in by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then once that 5 p.m. goes 5:01, the application portal will be closed, and you will not be able to apply for funds this year. Just to kind of give you an idea of the timeline, the committee will begin to meet September 1, all the way through the month of September. And then once that September 30th hits, that time period will be done. All decisions will be made. And then October 1 is when recipients will be start to be communicated about whether they receive funds or not, and to what level funds they receive. So, and we'll have checks and everything like that, wires going out to folks in the November-December timeframe. So again, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in for this fourth installment of our Empowerment Grant Recipient podcast series. And James, we appreciate you and your work, your organization. Two questions. One, are you applying again for more funds this year?
I'm thinking about it. Should I?
Yeah. It's nothing to get. I tell people, just because you received it last year doesn't mean you can't receive it again this year.
Right.
Like, you didn't do anything egregious where we banned you, so come on back. So definitely come on back, man. We definitely would love to have you. And I this is my first year. I'm helping the committee review applications, and a part of my job is to make sure that they review all applications in a fair and just manner, and they really take a time to think about it. So we're going to have, we're going to meet weekly to discuss all applicants, and we're going to probably do a 2-hour-long meeting where we're going to go through each and every applicant, weigh the pros and cons, how does it fit within the mission of what we're trying to do, and then what dollar amount that we feel like, well, they feel like, I don't get to make a decision, they feel like should be awarded, and we're just going to go from there.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about it. I'm considering it, and but I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. I may. I think I'll.
Okay. Well, don't wait till. Don't.
Right.
I don't want to send 3 emails like last time when I was
right?
looking for your report, and you were like, where? I need you to send me the link again. I was like, okay. It was my first time on the job, and I was like, you know what?
I tested you, huh?
Yeah, you tested me. We made it through though.
We did.
So thanks, James. You got any parting words before we sign off here?
Yes. Let me just say this, and I think this is apropos. This is by Paul Ferrari, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He says, while no one liberates himself by his own efforts alone, neither is he liberated by others. So while no one liberates himself by his own efforts alone, neither is he liberated by others. So we have to be involved in our own liberation, and part of that making our voice heard, right? So thank you.
Thank you guys again. We appreciate it. And until next time, join us back again here for our 5th installment, where we'll be finishing out. We have 2 more folks to go on our Empowerment Grant recipients from 23-24 cycle. Until then, guys, take care and have a good weekend.